Well, there it is. We're going to take a quick look at the latest PTR patch notes. So a few changes have been made. Kaidak says, once again, thank you all for the amazing feedback you've given to us through this PTR. The online posts, streams, and videos have been extremely helpful in today's new PTR build. We're making a few adjustments to specifically help the human versus undead matchup. We're also reverting all previous changes to promote late game air. Although we want to increase the viability of all units, we feel that with the current scope it would be too risky to release these changes into the live environment. We hope to revisit this after the current meta has settled down with the existing changes planned. So it looks like they don't want to change too much more from this point onwards. Please remember these changes are work in progress though and subject to change. And again, thank you for your continued feedback, the Warcraft Free team. So I don't think many things need to change from what they've changed here, but we'll go over it and I'll just explain what things probably could be reverted back. So, October 13th, PTR changes for human. Mountain King Thunderclap damage cap removed and damage reduced from 60, 115 to 160 to 60, 100, 145. So, Thunderclap level 2 now does 15 less damage, and it does also 15 less damage at level 3. So, this is a little a nudge on Thunderclap's power, but it also removes the annoying cap. So developers' notes say, while the damage cap of Thunderclap sounded good, we have seen counterintuitive play happening, such as mitigating the Mountain King's damage by surrounding him with more than 8 units. This indirectly increased mass ghouls and skeleton strategies, which was undesired. Damage caps can also lead to player frustration. I think they might have watched my video on that one. Just a slight guess. But yes, this is a good change. If War Stomp is going to be nerfed, then Thunderclap should also be nerfed. But the way you nerf it is the damage. A lot of people complained about the damage that Thunderclap does. So let's say, for example, Thunderclap still hits an Orc army and there are less than 8 units. Well, that doesn't solve the problem now, does it? If the cap is put in, because you're still taking the damage that you're complaining about. Whereas this way, the damage is just flat reduced. So now, there is less to complain about in regards to that. You will take less damage now from Thunderclap. So those complaining about Thunderclap being too powerful, doing too much damage, literally does less damage now. Castle Research gold cost reduced from 360 to 320. So the goal here is to increase the incentives for humans to go to Castle as well as promote some base options. I think that's good. Human are particularly very expensive when it comes to upgrading their town hall or their just into Castle tech. So this promotes tier 3 gameplay, which really results in more interesting gameplay, I think, from humans, because they get the Staff of Sanctuary, typically get the third hero, so there's a lot more counterplay between the heroes than just the duo hero. And not to mention that human is just expensive in general to sort of upgrade in comparison to other races. So I do prefer this change, and I think this actually helps the human mirror setup as well to sort of like incentivize away from spellbreakers, which is obviously what they've been trying to do lately. So, Undead. Crypt Lord, level 2 and level 3 Carrion Beetles hit points have been reduced from 330 490 to 300 440. So another light tap on the Carrion Beetles. Not a monumental amount, but enough to sort of like make it a bit more under control. The increased health on Carrion Beetles was warranted due to their reduced movement speed as well as their new requirement on Borrow. However, we felt that the current health was still too high and have reduced the amount of health increased. Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Crypt Lord Beetles are very annoying. Quite hard to take care of, actually. They're pretty damn tanky when you think about it. And considering there could be 6 of them now, that can be a lot of health. I mean, even when you think about it, it's been reduced to 440 from, at level 3? So, it's then 6 times 400. I'm going to have to do math on stream now, which is the worst thing you can possibly do. But that should be 2,400 plus 6 times 40. So 240 again, so 2,440 health or something, if I'm just going off the top of my head. Probably wrong. Ghouls and Abominations Cannibalize now requires research again. So this is a change to make it so that Undead have to spend for Cannibalize, whereas previously in the other PTR notes they made it so Cannibalize was free, but they've moved Cannibalize to Necropolis. So we decided to move Cannibalize to the Necropolis, which would promote variety and opening undead builds, while still giving a player a choice on what they want to invest into. So I think this is a good change, because typically Undead, they're only going to build 5 Acolytes, right? Then they've maxed out the gold mine, well, up to 5 Acolytes. Or they get the 6th Acolyte to scout, or to get an extra expansion. They will continue to build Acolytes at various points if they have gone for the expansion to fill it up. But generally speaking, the necropolis won't be always operating like other workers, other builders do, where they're constantly building peasants, peons, wisps. So this is probably the best place to have cannibalize if you was going to make it more accessible without making it free. Because if it's part of the crypt, it just interrupts you building your next ghoul or your fiend. So I'm all up for this change. I think this is cool, and it might see cannibalize get picked more often. Gargoyle. Prioritize and now will no longer stop the unit when activating. Added a status icon. So we're going to get into this status icon in a moment. The no longer stopping a unit is obviously a good thing, because that would be very annoying if you clicked it and then you wondered why your units were no longer attacking. It's because the command you gave to attack has been interrupted by activating the prioritize versus air. So the status icon I'm not a big fan of. I think it's nice to always see Blizzard add these... Yeah, watch out for that Archmage. He's in a bit of a precarious position. Let's pull a Gargoyle over and we can take a look. Excuse me. There we go. So here's the icon. So it's to indicate that you are prioritizing the claws. That's the icon for Claws of Frenzy. However, my issue is it's very dark. It doesn't really stand out. So you won't always be aware of whether you've activated it or not 100% clearly during a big battle. So you really want to make things just obvious. Now the immolation icon was incorrect, obviously, but it was big, bright and yellow, so it was basically impossible to miss on a first glance. So you knew you had it. Because obviously during a big battle, you're concentrating on so much. So if I look at gargoyles, I just want a quick glance. I just want to see in my peripheral vision that I've activated it. You can see the status, but there's going to be other status things. So this dark sort of like miniature icon here just doesn't stand out to me. So I came up with a solution. How about this? Now this is the cripple, right? But it's been changed to look like claws from a gargoyle with a red aura around instead of a green. So thanks to High Phaser, who tightened this up a bit for me, because I was working on this, but he's done a better version of it. I had something like this. But it's basically that, and you can either have it without it, but I would prefer with. You know how you have Inner Fire? Okay, so we picked Inner Fire.
I come to cleanse this
Research that. Research complete.
Research complete. Research complete.
So we have our Inner Fire. You can clearly see that this is activated, right? So that's what I would like for this. So when you right click on this, that will mean that prioritize is activated, or if you left click on it, however Blizzard program it. Either way, once it's activated, this will go, the yellow will go around in a sort of like square, so it'll be really obvious that it's on. And this will stand out, I think, a lot more on first glance in the status bar as opposed to this. So you can always, this is just an idea. This icon is literally just an idea. It could be like really yellow underneath. It doesn't matter. You know, the idea in principle, so you can make it more yellowish. We're not going to make this an art stream, but you just get the idea. Like, if you really just want to, there you go. So it's almost impossible to miss the damn thing. Do you know what I mean? So that's the idea behind that. So good idea with the icon. However, give it a little bit more clarity and visual depth. So when I'm concentrating on all the battle happening, I can very clearly see this yellow icon or whatever, this big claw, it's attacking. I know that my gargoyles are prioritizing air with their claws. So that icon can always be used for other air units. So it wouldn't work so well with the flying machine, but I figured if it's like claws, it's kind of more, you know, like... And someone else had the idea that maybe you would have it like this, where when you have it activated, you've got prioritize against air with claws. If you have it deactivated, you've got like a boots or something, insinuating that you're attacking the ground. So just a few ideas. Doesn't mean it's like going to be set up for the next patch. It's just an idea. Okay, so that's the gargoyle thing. We'll come back over. This is a big change, this one. This is really the most controversial change that is causing a lot of problems to people. Skeleton Warrior and Skeleton Mage level change from 1 to 2. Experience bounty increased from 12 to 20. So developers notes this will increase skeleton experience from 12 to 20, and while this will apply to all matchups, this should specifically help undead versus human skeleton harass. Now, I'm predominantly a human player, but I think this change is too far. Blizzard have the right intentions with a lot of these changes they're making. They're actually really trying to help out the meta and diversify it while sort of giving players more opportunities. But I feel like when it comes to their buffs and nerfs, they often go too far. Do you know what I mean? Like 12 to 20 is too much. It's almost double. So while skeleton warriors and mages are really annoying to deal with, particularly skeleton warriors from rods, it's a little bit too much. So 12 to 15 tops, but honestly, I'm not even sure if you necessarily need to increase the experience given, because changes have already been made to increase the peasant health. So a peasant is less likely to die to a skeleton now. That's one change. And then I can't remember what the other change is off the top of my head because I've literally just forgotten it as I'm talking. But basically, I don't think that needs to change because you've already done things to help human survive versus this situation. So this on top of those other changes probably isn't as required. 12 to 15 tops, 12 to 14 more realistic. Just keep it at 12, probably preferred for most undead players. Obviously this affects all races as well whenever they kill skeleton warriors. So again, you know, faster level ups on other heroes. For Night Elf and Orc could also change the pace of the game quicker than perhaps the undead is ready to deal with. I think I would prefer skeleton warriors and mages to either do slightly less damage, as in like literally 1 less damage, or perhaps just 5 less health. Just a tiny change like that, because what I find more annoying about skeletons is really how frivolously the undead use the skeleton rod, to the point where they barely even pay attention to what the skeletons are doing. Okay, it's just attacking peons or peasants or wisps. Go AFK. No need to pay attention anymore. It's doing its job. It is incredibly cost effective, the skeleton rod. Like, it's ridiculously cheap for what it is. 150 gold for like 8 skeletons, and they're pretty easy to spam out. And once you've got a decent number of them, you can sort of really keep control of your opponent very early on into the game. So it's very easy for the undead just to let them run loose and do what they do. So whilst I understand that increasing the bounty makes it so that it's more punishing for the undead, not microing the skeletons, I still think that's a bit too harsh. And it would just be better just to reduce their damage ever so slightly, or reduce their health, so the undead has to pay a bit more attention to microing and pulling them out. But anyway, I don't want to go too deep down that road, because I just think that is the biggest change out of all of these, and I think that definitely needs to not be 20. That's too high. Oh, the other thing that needed to be mentioned is, whether it's intentional or not, the 20 experience, right? Guys, can you give this guy a break? Just give him a moment. Yeah? Thanks. Okay. So I got an Archmage here, level 1 Archmage. Pulling him over. Gonna give him a nice tasty bit of damage. So here we can see we're going to pick up Rod of Necromancy, going to utilize that. So these are going to be turned into player 2. So he's going to kill each one of these. So that's 20 experience. Back. Those are all 20 experience. However, whether this is intentional or not, I don't know. But the Book of the Dead, the warriors from this only also give less experience. They give the original experience. So that's 12 experience and 12 experience. So I think those, if you're going to make it so that the Rod of Necromancy and all these skeletons, right, they give 20 experience, then it should go the same for Book of Dead. However, I think that's probably an oversight, and it's probably supposed to give 20 experience, but it doesn't. But 20 experience is too much. 15 tops, 14, again, realistic, 12, where it's just unchanged. Okay, so you got Pit Lord, level 1 Rain of Fire has been reduced from 800 to 700. So this means that it's a bit harder for the Pit Lord to get the position of Rain of Fire amongst peasants, where he's going to have to position himself a bit more dangerously, much closer to the human base. So there's more risk versus reward. Developers notes this change is specifically targeting the Undead Pit Lord push against human. So that's fine. I think that's okay, because it only affects level 1. It doesn't affect level 2 and 3. Nick said, what made what I think would be a decent, easy icon edit for the Garg target switch? Sent on Discord if you want to check it. Alright, give me a moment. Let's just swap over to this. Or this. And then turn off this. Because I don't know what I'm going to see if I go onto Discord. So I don't want to suddenly flip that up and then get something quite offensive. You never know. Oh, I see. So, yeah, okay, let's activate this. Got some swear words from me, but otherwise, this is the idea. Inactive, active. So that's the creature attack for Undead. It's an Undead upgrade for their range units. So I like the premise of it. But it's the idea, isn't it? It's sort of like, not only have you got like the right click, it's sort of this green aura around it. So yeah, it's a similar deal. It just needs to be way more obvious though, basically. And I think that Inner Fire idea I had was like much better. Where you sort of can really obviously see that it's working. The green glow could be even larger, to be honest. So then when you can see it at the status bar, it is a lot more obvious. But yeah. Good idea. Okay. Perfect. Let's come over to here. Pandaren Brewmaster, Breath of Fire damage cap removed. And Breath of Fire initial damage per level reduced. So 65, 125, 172, 60, 100, 140. That's much better. It keeps it more in line with Thunderclap. It's still really strong because it's ranged. You can cast it from very far away and immediately start running back, whereas the Mountain King obviously has to get much closer to do his targets. And Breath of Fire also hits air. So this is definitely a good idea because, again, removing caps is a fantastic idea. Caps are just boring. They cause more problems than they solve, in my opinion. If the damage is too high, just reduce the damage. Simple as that. It's less complicated and it actually deals with the situation more efficiently, in my opinion, than increasing the cap or implementing a cap. So, good stuff. Breath of Fire dot damage is reduced. And they say, while evaluating the damage cap on Thunderclap, we also saw the inconsistency that damage caps cause, so we felt this necessary. So, yeah, absolutely. Again, that's something they can play with. Perhaps Breath of Fire is still going to do too much damage now that it doesn't have a cap, so 140 might be a bit high. Perhaps it's just about right. We don't know, really. We'll find out over time, but I think that's fine. You think the music's a bit loud, do you? It's probably because this track, it's just changed to a different track, so it's got a different volume level. Items. Wander the Wind, Cyclone, cooldown removed, and charges reduced from 3 to 2. So they say reverting the cooldown and reducing the charges helps solve the original issue of the wand being able to take out a specific hero out of the fight for an extended period of time. So I think they just got a problem with the Wander the Wind, and maybe it should just be replaced with another item at this stage. It just sounds like it's causing more trouble than they like. So no longer has 3 charges, has 2 charges, but they removed the 5-second cooldown that they implemented on it. So effectively it kind of does the same thing, because I said that with 3 charges you could do, say for example, Wander the Wind on the first hero, and then yeah, no, I think this is actually better. I don't know, because with the 5-second cooldown it's the same sort of situation. You've got to wait 5 seconds before you can cast it again, but effectively you could probably keep a hero at the fight for 15 seconds, because I think Cyclone lasts at least 3 seconds, more likely 4 seconds, perhaps even 5 seconds versus heroes. It's quite a long time, even on heroes. So by making it 2 charges, the hero can only be out the fight but for like 10 seconds max. So that's longer than enough, you know. I don't know. I just think the Wander the Wind is a bit of an awkward item, really, when you think about it. So, what about other damage caps? Yeah, I mean, if it was up to me, I would just remove all the damage caps. Although there's not really that many other ones. I think the other one was like Carrion Swarm. I don't think the game is plagued with them. I can't remember any other ones off the top of my head. Reverted changes. So basically everything they did to air is now back to normal. So the costs have gone back up and the time to build has gone back up. We will potentially revisit all of the above at a later date. So probably for the best, one step at a time. Maybe when there's less changes to make in comparison to like the changes that you've currently made with Thunderclap, Undead in general, just one step at a time. Maybe when it's quieter, you can maybe experiment a bit more with implementing more air units into the game. But again, if you're going to do that, you have to do it with the smallest touches. Now, I wouldn't say that 280 gold to 260 is a big change, but I think most players are probably quite scared, at least in the higher level, of these kind of implementations really changing things. For the average player, it's not a big deal, but for the highest level, maybe that extra 20 gold is way too cheap. Do you know what I mean? So if you were going to do changes like this, 10 gold or something like that is fine. It has to be a very small amount. Right, the last but not least, Scout Tower, Guard Tower, Cannon Tower, Arcane Tower, repair time reverted back up to 5 seconds. So we decided to revert this change with concern for potential tower rush strategies re-emerging. So again, this is kind of fine. I think it is very difficult to get towers up as a human player, but peasants got the extra 10 health. So that's an extra 10 health on each of your 5 peasants at an expansion, for example. That could make the difference between you keeping a tower up or not. I would personally prefer to see this stay. However, I'm perfectly fine with it being reverted if enough people think it's a bad idea. Do you know what I mean? We'll see how we go with that. So I think overall these are very good changes. I'm very happy with them. I think Blizzard have made the right move to reduce the caps. They've given a new icon. Just needs a bit of work, but you can see the idea. Cannibalize moving to Necropolis. Definitely a good change. It's certainly not any worse because being in the crypt made it much more complicated to actually research whilst trying to get units as well at the same time. Skeleton Warrior, Skeleton Mage, again, this is your biggest one. I think you're going to get a lot more people crying about this than anything else. So if you were to make any changes back, it has to be this one. Yeah, the Carrion Beetles, like, you know, just keep those a little bit under tabs. And damage reduced on Mountain King, but the cap is gone. Fantastic. And Castle Research a little bit cheaper, so Tier 3 Human is much more interesting to watch than Tier 2. What can I say? It's good stuff, so thank you very much for watching. If you have any ideas or what you want to see in the patch, feel free to write them down in the comments below. And I'll see you guys later. Take care.